What is up, fantasy people, and welcome back to the True North Fantasy Pod. I am Trav, coming live from a secret location within the True North Fantasy Lair. And as always, co-hosting and West Coasting with me, Tyrell McLaughlin. How you doing, buddy? Happy Wednesday night. Happy to get on the mics with you, buddy.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while, and I am living the dream as always.
Yeah, dude, I love it. You mentioned that it's been a while. Last week I put out a solo epi, which is a little bit rare. So if anybody checked that out, please feel free to hook up some feedback. Love to improve that. We want to do some more solo stuff as well. Ty always hits them out of the park, so I'm getting there, my man. I'm getting there. Just want to give a big shout out, Ty, to our friends at the Fantasy Points Media Group. Tons of good brands in there. FantasyPoints.com is bumping right now. They just launched their PGA package, which is so good for Masters Week. Everything is free for Masters Week, so get in there. It is awesome. The Discord channel is bumping. And the prospect guide, which is huge for us Dynasty players, is out. And our promo code, TrueNorth22, will get you 10% off at FantasyPoints.com. 2022, dial it up, Ty.
The rookie guide is 100% worth the price of admission. I mean, Greg Cosell is one of the best prospect evaluators alive. Wes Huber's tireless efforts are also reflected in that bad boy. I think you mentioned dynasty owners loving it. I think it's an invaluable resource for us best ball degenerates who are trying to get values on these rookies before the NFL draft as well. So, and it's great once we have draft capital and landing spots for these rookies post NFL draft. And, Greg Cosell is doing all the heavy lifting on that one along with Wes Huber. So it's just, some of the best people on the planet at what they do, and they is doing it well.
Yeah, man. Greg Cosell is one of the GOATs. And then, of course, they've got a ton of shows going on right now. Joe Dolan and Greg Cosell are doing some shows going through some of these rookie positions as well. So you can check those out on the YouTube channel. And everything's looking good for FantasyPoints.com. So we couldn't be more thankful to be kind of a part of the media group. And tons of good brands in there. And the new golf analysts that they brought on are awesome. I'm feeling a lot more in tune with golf now that they've brought this on, because I feel like I can get more immersed in it because I'm learning things from them that I maybe don't have the time to pick up along the way as I normally would. So
and with the Masters in full force, that is a must.
Yeah, Tiger's dialed. Tiger is dialed.
Connors too. Let's go.
Absolutely, Canadian content, folks. Ty, why don't we not waste any more time? Why don't you talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight?
Okay, we're going to talk quarterbacks, but at the same time, we are going to make sure that we're hitting a lot of the weapons and talking about the fantasy implications of some of this quarterback carousel action that we've seen during the offseason here. So we're going to hit some of the most important changes that we've seen at the quarterback position, guys changing teams, guys returning, retiring and unretirees, all that good stuff. And we'll try and hit the weapons in those passing games, even the running backs in like Javonte Williams, Russ Wilson style. So there's lots to cover here. We should definitely pitter patter.
Yeah, let's get at her, Ty. And we're not going to waste any time, like we said, because it was a big offseason at the quarterback position. Tons of trades, some old guys, and the guy we're going to start with, actually, Tom Brady. He pulled the old wool over our heads and said he was retiring, and said, "Whoop, no, thank you. I am coming back." I feel like that conference championship loss probably stung a little bit too much for old Timmy to call it quits on that. And he knows that we think that his buddy Gronk is probably going to be following him there, so he's going to have a bunch of familiar faces. Even with Bruce Arians retiring and Todd Bowles, interestingly, getting the nod over Byron Leftwich as the new coach. I thought that was kind of an interesting wrinkle. But if you look at Tom Brady last year, Ty, he actually had a better season than he did the prior year. Statistically, at least, he had over 5,000 yards this year, another 40 burger in the touchdown category, as he will do. And most importantly, he held up all the weapons in that deadly Buccaneers offense, at least from a points per game standpoint. We know they had some injuries from all those weapons, but he finished last year as the quarterback 3 per our friends at fantasypoints.com, Ty. And I think the simple question for Tom Brady is, does he have top 5 upside once again in Tampa? Like, are you betting on those 40 touchdowns again from Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to call somebody who possesses zero, value with his legs, having top 5 upside in this day and age. But, it's hard to bet against Tom Brady, as we all know, even in fantasy. But I think he's more comfortably a quarterback 1, but more of a back-end quarterback 1 in rankings. And that upside is going to be like touchdowns would probably be the catalyst, because I think neither of us expects too much to change, despite Arians and his unique aired-out style retiring. Talk about a guy retiring and unretiring. Bruce Arians is gone again. And I thought like Byron Leftwich will man the offense, right? And he's probably a top coaching candidate for 2023 now. But I expect this offense to continue to hum sans Bruce Arians, and I'd bet that we'll see another season with the Bucs being one of the past heaviest offenses in football, and that volume I think will lead to a lot of yardage. You're just having to hope for a 40 touchdown season, which is a hard ask. But I don't think he's gonna be drafted as a quarterback 3, right? And I can't stress that volume enough. Like only one team threw the ball 675 times last season. It was Tampa Bay, and they chucked the rock 731 times. They led the NFL in passing yards and intended and completed air yards. So I think our expectations should be high for this passing game. And I think this passing game has just gotten stronger over the early offseason here. Meanwhile, the run game really has not. And even if some anomaly happens and Tom Brady sees his arm strength decline, or maybe Byron Leftwich is not as Bruce Arians-esque, and we're not seeing the type of air yards that we're accustomed to seeing in a Bruce Arians offense, the Bucs can scheme to get a lot more yards after the catch. Amazingly, when you think about them dominating in the air yards categories, the Bucs actually had the second most yards after the catch as a team last year, behind only Andy Reid, Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that's important to note, because it's possible Brady might also need to get rid of the ball a little quicker. We definitely saw some turnover on the offensive line in Tampa Bay this offseason, and they kept Brady clean at a totally unrepeatable rate. Tampa Bay was the only team to allow under 27 sacks last season. They allowed just 23. So maybe Tom has to do it a bit differently, but something tells me he would be able to adapt and survive. And he led the NFL in touchdown passes, like you alluded to. So that upside exists in that fashion. So for fantasy, with all things considered, I'll still have Brady as a QB1 for 2022 here, a top 12 guy. Like, I'm looking at my ranks here. Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray. That's the problem, right? Like, it's hard to call him a top 5 quarterback when I have like 3 or 4 guys that are just so locked into that.
Yeah,
in
Lamar, even Joe Burrow sneaks in there for me.
Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, with all the weapons at his disposal all of a sudden. So it's a tough ask. And then you have other veterans like Aaron Rodgers. Matthew Stafford has a very nice ecosystem. And then Tom Brady is in that tier, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's just right in that back end tier for me. And just to a couple of your points there, I liked what you said about Byron Leftwich being able to man the ship, because like if anybody's going to be able to carry over what Bruce Arians is going to do, it's going to be his like longtime protege in Byron Leftwich. He's been there with him since Arizona. And he won a Super Bowl with him here. And then you couple that with Tom Brady being such a field general and a guy who's probably going to call his own offense essentially, and Leftwich is going to just kind of run with what Tom Brady wants to do. I think they're going to be in good hands. And I think with the arm strength piece, I don't think he's going to go full Peyton Manning where he's just throwing ducks up there. You know what I mean? I think like he has like a little bit more looping touch on his balls, where I think he can use some of that, like you said, to create those after the catch situations, or maybe he just throws it up to Mike Evans a little bit earlier, exactly like you said, and just puts it out in front of him a bit. I think Tom Brady's got that kind of touch on his ball. So
and they have the weapons. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's good.
They also have the weapons to do it after the catch, right? And Chris Godwin and Russell Gage coming in town. We alluded to it on the wide receiver edition. But this helps the pass catchers immensely. Obviously, Mike Evans is just a huge winner with Tom Brady coming back. Russell Gage in the mix now. So yeah, I think Tom Brady's a safe quarterback 10 to 12 in most people's rankings. That's probably what we see. I think the offensive identity remains intact as well. And yeah, I think the pass catchers for fantasy purposes will reap the rewards here the most.
Totally. Yeah. Make sure you go back and check out that wide receiver episode. I think we had a really, really good chat about all of the movement at the wide receiver position. We talked a little bit of Russell Gage and what his upside is as well. And I like his fit in that offense. Can't be understated that Lenny Fournette is a huge winner just overall, not necessarily just because of Brady, because he came back as well. And it looks like he, at this point, has that backfield all to himself unless they draft somebody high. So, Lenny is a big beneficiary of Tom Brady as well, and it's going to be another good year for Tampa. They're gunning for that title with Tom Brady coming back because he's not going to be around for too much longer. Next, I want to talk about a little bit of Mitch Trubisky, Ty, and you're just coming back on the scene here with a little bit of a chuckle there because Mitch signed with your Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think, Mitch comes into a deadly little situation after that 1 year backing up Josh Allen. It seems like his reputation came way up for doing absolutely nothing. So he did a good job holding that clipboard out in Buffalo at the very least. And that got him a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a great situation for him, right? Like, obviously their offensive line woes have been talked about a bunch, but I think like Mitch is pretty mobile and he can come in and do some of that mobility stuff that Ben Roethlisberger just could not do anymore. And I think they're probably going to put some concerted efforts into helping out that offensive line, knowing that they have maybe less experience and savvy veteranship in Trubisky versus Ben Roethlisberger. But regardless of how we think, I'm excited to see it play out. I'm curious to hear what you think. I always kind of dive into your mind as the Steelers kind of aficionado. Do you think he keeps this offense? Like, he's going to keep it going up to the level of Ben Roethlisberger, of course, but how much higher do you think he can take it?
Yeah, it's tough because it's nothing if not a lateral move in terms of what we should anticipate from the weapons. It's just going to be they're going to go about it a lot differently. I mean, the idea that Trubisky will start at quarterback for the Steelers is pretty sickening. I'm not going to lie.
I thought you'd say that.
Having said that, we're talking fantasy football here, and Mitch does add fantasy value with his legs, right? And it's exceedingly hard to identify late round targets at the quarterback position, right? So, we just aren't offered any diamonds in the rough like we were even just a few years ago. So as gross as it is, there's a possibility that I end up gravitating towards Trubisky as a very late option, or a guy who will at the very least outplay his ADP for fantasy owners later on in fantasy drafts. It feels dirty though. I'll need a shower after.
Yeah.
The more important fallout for fantasy though is what impact would Mitch Trubisky have on the array of weapons in Pittsburgh. I think Najee Harris is good to go as a first-round pick, in my opinion. Trubisky's rushing upside could help Najee Harris's efficiency, could build in a wee bit of efficiency for that whole run game. That's just, they're just dying for some freaking efficiency. Some RPO action could help down around the goal line as well, I think, for that touchdown upside that just wasn't there last year. So it's not like he'd be... it's not like we're losing touchdown upside or anything with Mitch Trubisky under center, I don't think. In fact, the two teams we're talking about Tampa Bay, and now we're talking about Pittsburgh. They're the only two teams who threw the ball over 60% of the time in 2021 when inside their opponent's red zone. And the Steelers were the pass heaviest red zone team with a 71% pass rate inside their opponent's red zone. So that will not be the case with Mitch Trubisky under center, in my opinion, and that is great news for somebody like Najee Harris. Yeah. And even as a receiver for Najee, normally mobile quarterbacks hurt the running back target share in the passing game, but it's just so built into the Steelers passing game and their identity so much. And, I think Najee will still catch a ton of passes. And the Bears were actually top 5 in the NFL in 2018 and in 2019 in running back market share. Trubisky's final 2 seasons as a starter in Chicago. The wide receivers, I think, are a bit trickier. The season Deontay Johnson put together last year and the talent and upside that we all see in Chase Claypool, we probably hope that their 2022 wouldn't hinge on Mitch fucking Trubisky. But again, having said that, I can't, like you kind of alluded to off the top there, I just can't see it being much worse than what Big Ben has offered. I mean, the touchdown upside is something that we probably do have to worry about a little bit. That's what I was talking about there. I think when all is said and done, though, it's probably, like I said, a lateral move. You know what I mean? Like Big Ben made us downgrade the weapons in the passing game. Trubisky would too, right? And maybe a tad bit more. And that's interesting because they really aren't very similar quarterbacks, and thinking about that Like, I think the release time is what I'll be most interested to see, like how that offense is operating. The Steelers passing game has been a very one-dimensional passing game over the last few years here, and Big Ben's just getting rid of the ball like historically fast, and that's led to some super low average depths of targets amongst these pass catchers and some pretty locked-in roles, you know what I mean, and niches being filled amongst the pass catchers, despite Deontay and especially Chase Claypool actually, you know, in my opinion, being very versatile. But yeah, to put some value to these names, like Deontay Johnson is like a mid wide receiver 2 for me in best ball ranks, despite being a top 10 wide receiver in PPR last season. And I think I have Chase Claypool on that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 cusp. I do think both guys could be values in my opinion, though, especially if we see this offense transform a little bit. And yeah, I think the Steelers let some wide receivers go, right? So Juju gone, James Washington gone, Ray McLeod gone. You know, maybe Pittsburgh is in the wide receiver market come the NFL draft. Actually, I guarantee they are in the wide receiver market come the NFL draft. And this organization has had incredible success plucking out wide receivers in the NFL draft. And speaking of successes in the draft, I think tight end Pat Freiermuth is a guy that we should probably touch on too, because I think he could have a big season. Like, I think he's a tight end 1 in my ranks right now. What's up, Boo? Yeah, I think, let me check my ranks really quick. So I have Pat Freiermuth as a top 10 tight end right now in my ranks.
I got him at 11.
Crazy. I mean, his 60 catches were the fifth most ever by a rookie tight end, as were his 7 touchdowns since I was born. So since you were born as well. So since 1989, only Gronk and Hunter Henry scored more, and only Shockey, Evan Ingram, and Kyle Pitts had more catches in their rookie season as a tight end.
Nice. Yeah, I got him as 11 as well, just because towards the end of the season, it looked like it wasn't just like a Ben Roethlisberger thing where he was being worked into the offense. This was like he was being built into this offense as a focal point. And I think that's only going to help a guy like Trubisky, who's maybe not going to have like the I don't even know, like confidence that Ben Roethlisberger might have to hit these outside weapons. But that even feels gross to say. Yeah, like he did, but like it still feels kind of gross to say, because what are you being confident about that like 1 yard ADOT, bud? But anyway, like I think Freiermuth is going to be baked into that role where you're probably not going to get more than like 700 yards, but you're probably getting like 7 to 10 touchdowns from him this year. The one thing, just to go back to the other weapons there, Ty, I might be a little bit more concerned about Najee's target share than you. I know that Tariq Cohen was a huge benefactor of Mitch's targets, but I do wonder if we're going to see Najee getting up into that 90-something range. I think if he settles down, into the 60 to 70 range, he's going to be fine for fantasy. He's going to pay off that first round pick because he's going to get 320 carries. But I do wonder if like that ultimate upside, where if we saw some efficiency on top of his volume as a rookie, it would have been stinky numbers that we would have seen. But that remains to be seen, because there's nothing but up as far as efficiency to be had in this offense, and that goes in the passing game and the running game. And I think Mitch is actually going to be good for the wide receivers. I think just that guy coming in as a spark. I feel like Roethlisberger was a bit of a dark cloud over this team for the last maybe couple seasons, and not necessarily just his play, just the drama around whether he's going to play and all that jazz cabbage. But I think Claypool's versatility is going to come in very handy for this team, like you alluded to there. I think they're going to utilize that probably a little bit more than we have seen, and we've seen quite a bit of it, and very successfully. And then I think that average depth of target only has room to go up, right? And so I think that only leads to additional upside for mainly the wide receivers. So I like the move. I think it's a stopgap. It's not a long-term move necessarily, but I think it's going to be positive for the offense, and they're going to remain with that defense in contention, which is the Steelers' goal every single year, right? They're never going to be tanking. They're not bringing Mitch in to just have a shit show season, get a high pick. They want to compete with him.
Yeah, and it's a young core, so I wouldn't be upset if Mitch falls on his face, to be completely honest. And
totally.
He's going to be drafted in fantasy drafts at a point in the draft where it's not going to kill you to drop him in your home league or whatever.
Totally. And like I'm sure you also wouldn't be upset if he had 2 decent seasons and kind of gave you guys some time to find that quarterback of the future. It's going to be like, it's hard because they'd have to have that high pick, but I think it could go either way with Mitch Trubisky, and I don't think for fantasy we're going to be too disappointed here. I'm going to carry on, though, Ty. Another mobile quarterback who signed. We're not going to spend as much time on him. Marcus Mariota to Atlanta. very interesting because that team has almost been stripped bare after Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and who knows what the hell is going on with Calvin Ridley. But I actually kind of like the fact that Mariota is getting a bit of a shot here because he was a number 2 overall pick. He played in Tennessee, and he took them to the playoffs, caught a touchdown from himself. That's pretty fucking badass if you ask me. And he's getting a chance to be, I think for fantasy, he's going to be a solid streamer this year for my money. And, I don't know if he's the guy who's going to bring, say, Kyle Pitts to his ultimate upside or necessarily make Cordero Patterson do more than what he did last year. I don't think he's going to elevate the team like that. But I think him as a fantasy quarterback is going to be viable to use on a week-to-week basis because I think he's going to give you 20 to 40 rushing yards most weeks. But what's your take on Marcus Mariota in Atlanta, though? Like, what do you think he does for Kyle Pitts in comparison to Matt Ryan? And then what do you think about Marcus Mariota as the quarterback on maybe your fantasy streaming lineup?
Yeah, I think Mariota's going to end up pretty low in my rankings. That offensive line has just really failed to live up to expectations. And, Kyle Pitts is going to do Kyle Pitts things, but he's also going to have to be drafted as a top 5 tight end in every format. He's going to be going really high in FFPC tight end premium leagues and things like that. So it's going to be hard to capture much of a ceiling or him to pay off immensely with the prices that you're going to have to pay with Kyle Pitts, but I don't think he's going to tank Kyle Pitts by any means. Obviously, we want to monitor where Atlanta goes in the NFL draft and how heavily they invest in the wide receiver position because I expect them to definitely use one of their top 3 picks to grab a wide receiver.
Yeah, they better. They definitely better if they want to have some semblance of an offense and, make Kyle Pitts feel confident about the future as a part of this team, as a cornerstone of this team. So I think wide receiver is definitely in their future. And I think that only helps Marcus Mariota in having a more reliable target. And then if Calvin Ridley were to come back and they add like a first round wide receiver or something, or maybe they get, one of those second round guys slips and they get a really good value on him, I think that could look pretty nice for this offense going forward. And then they plunk that rookie quarterback into that. And I think they could take off. Some work to be done on that defense as well. But I would have Marcus Mariota right in that quarterback 20 to 24 range as a guy, like I said, you're just going to stream him when you need him. But I think he's going to be, he's going to be on the plus side of an average streamer,
Yeah, and I just Arthur Smith is like the big thing that kind of worries me more than Marcus Mariota. Like I just think the marriage between whoever was going to play quarterback after Matt Ryan was traded and Arthur Smith and his run heavy kind of marrow,
yeah, totally in his bones.
Yeah, it's just in his bones. So I just think we should expect Atlanta to be very run heavy unless they're an extremely bad football team in 2022.
Yeah, Arthur Smith's bone marrow, man.
Well, we just saw the average depth of target, the air yards, all that stuff just completely fell off a cliff in his first season there, even though they were an extremely competitive team last year.
Yeah, I think with some mobility and play action, he can be fine though, right? Like I think Arthur Smith was there when Marcus Mariota was in Tennessee, and Arthur Smith was the guy who had that turnaround for Ryan Tannehill when Ryan Tannehill made us love Ryan Tannehill, right? I was big into Tanny when he came into Tennessee, and I'm kind of off him a little bit more now. And I think a lot of that is because Arthur Smith is gone, and I think a lot of the fun pieces of that offense were sapped when he left. And so hopefully he can dial in some of that with somebody who's a little bit more mobile, like Marcus Mariota versus Matt Ryan. Obviously, it's like a statue versus a cheetah, pretty much. So
and Mariota has to stay healthy.
Yeah, he has to stay healthy, but I think he can be accurate, and I think he can have that mobility piece that allows them to have a little bit of leeway for maybe some deficiencies when he's in the pocket. So I don't mind Mariota there. A couple other ones, Ty, if you got some thoughts on these ones, fire away, but I'm ready to keep rolling. Teddy Bridgewater to Miami to back up Tua. Not the super strong-armed quarterback, so I don't think he's going to be the guy who's coming in for closer situations to win a game that they're behind like Fitzmagic was. But Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the backup in Miami, and that team's looking like it's loaded. So if Teddy gets a chance to play, I think he can keep those wide receivers afloat. And then Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod, I think is what the actual pronunciation is, to the New York Giants to back up Daniel Jones, or so we think, because Tyrod Taylor is pesky and he could end up outplaying Daniel Jones if Jones fell flat. But I think Brian Daboll would do well to give Daniel Jones a shot. Because we just saw what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo, and he's coming over to New York to try and instill some of that in Danny Dimes.
Yeah, I think Tyrod's interesting because the Brian Daboll him coming in as the head coach makes this a signing that we shouldn't just gloss over, especially with Daniel Jones' struggles over the last, since being drafted. But it's a massive plus EV coaching change for the passing game coming from Buffalo. And funny enough, he actually wasn't there when Tyrod was. He got there the year after Tyrod left, I think. But I don't know if Tyrod's anything other than plan B at this point. It's possible with the new coach and playbook incoming that they kind of sell it as a competition in camp, a competition with, no real winner, I think, like for this entire passing game when you look at it, because I'm not here to go to bat for Daniel Jones or anything, but Tyrod has been, an objectively bad passer in recent years. So I'm not, and, he's getting older now. He's going to be 33 years old when 2022 season starts. So that rushing upside, I think, is just less certain as he ages. So even if he gets in there, I'm not sure we should anticipate like 2016 Tyrod or anything, as the arm strength is another thing that deteriorates over time. And those are his two moneymakers. That's his bread and butter, is the rushing and the arm strength, because he had a pretty good deep ball touch. So not a lot of faith in Tyrod, if any, but not a lot of faith in Daniel Jones either. And I just don't have a lot of faith in the pass blocking there. I mean, they're the third worst pass blocking unit according to PFF last year, the worst in 2020. And I'm also not sure what the run game's going to look like, right? Like, what is going to happen with Saquon Barkley at this point?
Is he anymore?
Yeah, and that will significantly impact not just the rush to pass ratio, but definitely the running back market share, the average depth of target for who plays quarterback. Mm-hmm. So there's just too many hurdles for me, and the Dable complex is just not quite enough to make Daniel Jones anything more than like a very back-end quarterback 2 for fantasy this year. And I'm not sure Tyrod's rushing upside would make him much more. You know what I mean? I do think if Saquon stays healthy, though, he's probably a steal in fantasy at his current cost, no matter where he plays, to be honest, because he's getting selected in like the third round of some fantasy drafts right now. And I get the injury woes. I definitely feel the lack of efficiency last year. The touchdown total was abysmal. And that's just, in my opinion, multiple areas in which he can improve and really pay off that average draft position that we see right now. Then if we turn our attention to the other weapons in the passing game and say Saquon was out of the picture, that's definitely, there's going to be a lot more volume to go around, I think. And you think of someone like Sterling Shepard, volume is about all he's ever had going for him. I've always thought drafting Sterling Shepard is kind of a recipe for second place, so to speak, in your fantasy league. But alas, like, his ADP is very low. I'm still not interested in him, though. I think he's outside my top 200 overall ranks. Kenny Gallaudet isn't ranked much higher for me, to be honest, either. I'm much lower than ECR on Kenny Gallaudet. Yeah. Somebody I might have interest in, though, might be Kadarius Toney. If Saquon departs, then definitely. And that's a pretty unoriginal stance, no doubt, like liking Kadarius Toney out of this passing game. But I'm even kind of tempering expectations on Toney a little bit. Like, he's just a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 in my books, even in Dynasty, to be honest. I think the story in New York is that the sum of their parts, including this coaching staff, will be a big improvement. Like, the Giants had, for instance, the second fewest yards after the catch as a team last year. That will improve in 2022. But, it's like that saying from Starsky and Hutch. Like, they moved up a notch. They went from, now they're at notch 1.
Yeah.
So it's just been that bad on offense over the last couple of years. I just don't think they're going to score many points. I mean, the Giants had the second fewest red zone trips in football in 2021 and in 2020, and they were the worst team at converting red zone trips into touchdowns last year, second worst the year before. So the new coaching staff and stuff, it just isn't enough for me. And the Giants are shaping up to be a team to just almost entirely avoid for fantasy, to be honest, although I do like Saquon Barkley at his cost. Right?
At a discount. Yeah, no, and he's definitely staying at that discount for now. We might see that rise, but I don't see what's going to happen for him that makes that rise, right? Like, his path is already clear. He's the guy with the most talent. I will say Matt Breida did sign there, my boy. So keep an eye on him as a guy who could have that late season surge, maybe as a league winner if Saquon were to get hurt again. That's the biggest piece, is that health for Saquon. And like you said,
so
like,
grab Breida, the healthiest guy ever.
Well, I'm just dare to dream. Okay. I want it to fucking happen. Me too, man. Me too. Yeah. Only on those deep dino rosters for show.
That's the mark of a good fantasy player. Some guy burns you, fuck him forever.
Yeah, totally. I think that was well put on the Giants offense, Ty. Not something I'm looking at aside from just the potential explosiveness of Kadarius Toney. But there's not much explosiveness elsewhere. Free Darius Slayton though. I want to just chat about our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Ty, we're going to get into some of these big quarterback trades, but some of those big quarterback trades benefited some of those best ball teams that I was drafting, because there's a couple spots where I got Russell Wilson very late, a couple spots where I got Cortland Sutton really late, which I am stoked about. Some Jerry Jeudy action as well, and some stacks that I didn't know were stacks when I drafted them. Russell Wilson or somebody got traded, and then all of a sudden I have that team's passing attack, and that's all done on Underdog Fantasy, and I'm having a ton of fun. Right now, they've got their big board Superflex tournament going on, and that is, I believe, it's about 80% full, and that ends on April the 26th is when they're shutting that down before the draft. So make sure you get in and get some entries into the Underdog Big Board Superflex, because it's a ton of fun. It's cool to see where these quarterback values are at this point in the season, and then as we do some more of these drafts throughout the off season, we're going to see how they fluctuate, and that's why we're breaking it down right now, and we're going to talk about a lot of these guys throughout the rest of the season, Ty, because it's just fun to dive into, and I think Underdog is just kind of another tool for you to play and get acclimated. So go to Underdog, use our promo code TNFF, and you'll get an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. Spend $100, get another $100. You got two, honey, and you are rolling in some of these best ball drafts. They got all sorts of sports as well. I laid some pick'ems down on the Masters. They had a special line for Tiger to commemorate his return to the Masters, where his line was 999 strokes for the first round. So you obviously take the under, and you have that one in the bag. Justin Thomas shot a 76, where I had him shooting 72 or better, and he ruined my chance at multiplying my $5 by 6 and turning it into $30. It's that simple. So Underdog promo code is TNFF, instant match on your first deposit up to $100. And just go have fun. Let us know if you're playing on there. Share some screenshots of your teams. Let's talk about who you're drafting where. We really want to kind of spark some of that engagement. So please make sure you tag us, or if you see me or Ty posting something about some best ball values or maybe some screenshots or something, hop in the comments and let's chat about it, because it's tons of fun is what I'm trying to say there. Okay, Ty, so we're going to get into, I've got on the show sheet Trade Mageddon. I know Greg Rosenthal from NFL.com lore calls it the trade tsunami, which I also love that as a title, but I wasn't about to bite that, so I went for Trade Mageddon. I just like to be original. That's what I'm trying to go for here. But first guy on the Darnell docket, we touched on him earlier, and it is Matt Ryan. No longer in Atlanta, longtime stalwart behind center for the Dirty Birds, is now in Indianapolis with the Colts, a team that is just churning dudes through that quarterback position year after year, trying to find some shit that sticks to a wall. Matt Ryan's an interesting candidate to go in there. It's questionable whether he has the tools that he once had. I know he can be a really good distributor. The Falcons did pursue Deshaun Watson, so he was a bit of a consolation prize to ship him out. They had to do that, and it was a good move on their part. I want to know, though, I think the most important question for Matt Ryan is, how does he keep these weapons afloat? Obviously, Michael Pittman had that breakout last year. Are we going to see a bit more of a breakout from Michael Pittman? And then Jonathan Taylor, Ty. So why don't I just open the floor and you can kind of talk about what you think his impact is there?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor, he's the consensus first overall pick in fantasy this year for good reasons. Maybe not in the Underdog Superflex Big Board tournament.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the Matt Ryan trade, I guess it enforces the idea that he'll be a true workhorse on first and second downs. And in 2022, I think the Colts will be one of the run heaviest teams in football again in 2022. And thinking about Matt Ryan, he has usually operated in a very pass heavy offense. But last year he got some experience in a run first offense with Arthur Smith, as we alluded to, taking over the head coaching duties in Atlanta. I think the new scheme was, in concert with Matt Ryan getting older. We just saw a wildly low average depth of target for Matty Ice in Atlanta last year, and I am betting on him looking more like that than the Matt Ryan that we were used to a half decade ago or whatever with Dirk Cutter and Dan Quinn and them. I'm just not sure how explosive the Colts will even try to be in the passing game. You know what I mean? I'm not sure Matt Ryan isn't on a big downward spiral in his career arc as well. So I kind of think he is close to cooked. Like, I feel bad saying that, but I just don't really, I didn't like what I see, like the air yards per attempt, the lack of explosive plays last year. Even looking at his yards per attempt when targeting running backs and wide receivers, it was all pretty repulsive for Matt Ryan in 2021. With that being said, there were two big problems with the Falcons offense last year that aren't problems for the Colts. They're actually big strengths for the Colts, and that's the offensive line. The Falcons allowed the third highest pressure rate in all of football last year, and health pending, the Colts will be much better. And the Falcons had one of the worst run games, arguably the worst rushing attack behind Houston last year. Meanwhile, the Colts have Jonathan fucking Taylor. So, a spectacular run game to lean on and work off of, like when it comes to play action and stuff. So I get where people are coming from who aren't ready to bury him yet. I just think we should probably bury him for fantasy because of the profile of quarterback Matt Ryan is. He's always been reliant on multiple touchdown passes to pay off in a week, and sometimes he needs multiple touchdown passes along with 300-plus yard games to have those spiked weeks because he's just a zero in the run game. He needs like an outlier-style season to offer that ultimate ceiling that we chase at quarterback. And we don't want the quarterback 14 who scores within 2 points per game of the quarterback 23. That barely constitutes a quarterback as a hit, in my opinion, no matter how late you have to draft them. So he just doesn't, there's some signs pointing to a bounce back campaign of sorts, just, in the confines of this run first offense. And I just don't think he really is the guy that we want to identify as a late round quarterback target of ours in fantasy. Michael Pittman, probably, you mentioned him, he probably stays in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. Yeah. In my opinion, for redraft and dynasty, he will be a trendy third-year breakout guy, I think. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to end up having of Michael Pittman. And you kind of feel for the dude who has to build rapport with yet another quarterback in this offense, right? So,
for sure.
Like, I'd probably take guys like, Darnell Mooney, Cortland Sutton, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have guys like that ahead of him. I'd probably take him over someone like Allen Robinson in his new digs with the Rams. I'd probably take him over, a Michael Thomas or something. But Michael Pittman's somebody that I worry there'll be somebody who likes him more in every draft. I'm not touching on any of the other wide receivers like T.Y. Hilton, Bruce Campbell, both outside my top 200 overall ranks. They aren't even really on my radar, even in deeper drafts. Same with, the depth pieces, Kiki Kuti, Michael Strahan
or something like that.
Ashton Doolin.
Yeah,
so as much as
people
I like
we don't care about,
because I actually like all three of those guys in a vacuum, they just aren't on the fantasy radar. I do like the platoon at tight end, though. I did want to mention them. I like Mo Alley Cox. I've been a big proponent of his. I also like Kylan Granson. Like, I'm not even saying run out and draft or acquire either guy, but I think the play might be to draft both of them in like deep tight end premium FFPC best ball drafts. But I think that's a big battle to watch in camp to see who might kind of break onto the scene here at the tight end position. I think like the play is probably draft both those guys.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be taking up 2 roster spots for those guys, depending. Like, if I see one emerging, I would probably gravitate towards one of them. And I might think that could be Kylan Granson, just because the trajectory for him feels like it's still upwards, where we've been waiting for Mo Alley's trajectory to start moving upwards. And it's, it's ticked upwards a little bit, but then it keeps starting to kind of look like it's going to go downward. I actually talked him up on the tight end episode that I did, that solo epi that I did, talked him up a little bit, saying that he's got an athletic profile, got the red zone potential, and that's kind of all you look for in those dart throw tight ends, and both of these guys kind of have that. So I do like that we are maybe attacking the tight end, but I'd have a hard time maybe using those 2 roster spots. The guy that I'm looking at is Michael Pittman, and I think Matt Ryan, while I agree with you, he's not going to be a guy I'm targeting for fantasy football. Like, if it's a super flex team and I'm finding I'm at the back of the tier of startable guys for my quarterback 2, sure, maybe. I'm not going to be happy about it, but if I need that recovery at the quarterback position, I think Matt Ryan can offer you that. Low upside guy you can slot in there, right? But Michael Pittman, I think I might have him a little bit higher than you, because I would put him above Gabe Davis. I'd put him above Darnell Mooney. I would put him behind Cortland Sutton, though. And I'm not necessarily sure about Allen Robinson. I think that's kind of the crux for me, is right around there. But I think Matt Ryan, even though not good for fantasy on our lineups, I think he can be good for Michael Pittman. Like, Michael Pittman didn't even have 1,100 yards last year, I believe, or maybe just over 1,100. I think Matt Ryan could be the guy who gets him into that 1,200 plus if all things go well. Like, I think they would need to not bring in more wide receiver assets because I think they need this offense to be a funnel for him to do that. He needs to be that guy who's soaking up that 25+% target share. And I think with Jonathan Taylor, they have an offense that could insulate Matt Ryan and allow Michael Pittman to do that. But I'm not sure they're actually done at the wide receiver position. I think like they're going to need to add somebody. They can't rely on Paris Campbell. T.Y. Hilton can't be relied on. Those other dudes, whatever their names are, I can't remember. Like, they're not guys that are going to be focal points. So I think Michael Pittman can definitely do it with Matt Ryan, and I think Matt Ryan's just going to be a benefit. I think for JT, I'm not necessarily concerned because we already expected the 250 to 300 carries. I think those 40 receptions or so are probably doable again for him, even with Nyheim Hines re-signing that contract. I think Jonathan Taylor still could do that because Matt Ryan has previously been able to feed the running back. We know those elite seasons that Devontae Freeman had as a receiver as well as a runner. I think Jonathan Taylor could do that. They're just not necessarily going to give him that kind of target volume, but I don't think he needs that. I've said that all along with JT is he doesn't really need to have 70 plus targets because I think like we have to expect that there's going to be that regression for him coming this season from those 20 touchdowns. But I think there could be enough there to keep him in that running back one conversation and having those blow up weeks still for us where he goes for a few touchdowns. So I think if anybody's going to give us a 20 touchdown season, it's probably him or Derrick Henry, right? And, just Jonathan Taylor just has the juice, man. He looks so good.
With Michael Pittman, and like personally, that's why I'm not rushing to grab him because number one, he is a trendy third-year breakout wide receiver. Like people think he's really going to take that next step, and I'm not sure that he's capped when it comes to the touchdown column because of.
Yeah, that's a fair point too because I think they are going to go to.
I think you made a great point about how condensed we need this passing game to be, and that just hasn't really been Matt Ryan's style. Like I know he's had multiple very talented wide receivers on his team almost his entire career. But, I just think this is going to be one of the run heaviest offenses in football, and I just worry Michael Pittman might give you a bunch of duds.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And you mentioned that he's going to be a hot third-year breakout, and I think among those third-year guys who could break out, I probably would still put him at the back of that tier, like depending on the names we got. I'm not going to go deep into it right now, but the back of those guys who are likely breakouts, I think I would probably put him as the lowest upside option, kind of like you were saying there. I'm going to keep us firing away here though, Ty. The next move we're going to talk about, and this is the juiciest one that might have ever happened in the NFL ever.
Well, this all is like Russell Wilson. Like this just didn't happen 10 years ago.
We're
seeing quarterbacks get traded like this, even wide receivers that we've talked about. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, these guys are diving. These guys play fantasy clearly because they are letting go of these guys like they're dirty. Yeah, lots of Madden. Yeah, absolutely. So, Deshaun Watson goes to Cleveland. That was a wild scenario. It looked like the Browns were out of it, but then they came back in at the 11th hour, and he had this big letter about going to the Browns or something like that. I think that, like I said, the Falcons were involved, the Panthers were involved, the Saints were involved, pretty much the whole NFC South was involved, and it was just a bit of a shit show. We're going to kind of bypass all the legal stuff, Ty. I don't really think that that's our wheelhouse to get into unless you want to speak to it. Have at her.
Church and state easily. I watch
same here.
Tom Cruise movies, even though Tom Cruise is nuts. I listen to Will Smith's old shit, even though Will Smith lost his marbles. Like, I don't care about that stuff. I can separate church and state. I can understand that I might not agree with some guy's personality. He might be a giant piece of fucking shit. But this is a game, and I want to win this game.
Exactly. It's not, it's not an indictment on, how we are as people or nothing like that. So I'm kind of with you. It doesn't really matter to me. It's a person who I can put in there that's going to score points. And Deshaun Watson, man, like it's safe to say he's probably back in our top 10 for quarterbacks in 2022 and probably for Dynasty as well. I'm going to dive in a little bit. He was a top 5 quarterback the last 3 seasons that he played, Ty. Top 10 on a per game basis in all 4 of his seasons in the NFL, which is pretty incredible. I think his rushing, like for me, him being in the top 10 as a lock is mainly due to his rushing ability because that floor that he brings is fantastic. He averages about 35 rushing yards per game for his career, which is an extra 3.5 points for your fantasy team, right? It's just that simple. And, that's not including the fact that he has a bit of a nose for the end zone, when he's in close. We saw a lot of those touchdowns from Deshaun Watson when he was in Houston in his heyday. But I do wonder, Ty, and this is for me the big elephant in the Cleveland room, is the big elephant in the dog pound, is the passing work. Like, how much is it going to be? How is it going to shift? Because I don't know if the offensive scheme necessarily fits the ceiling that we want from Deshaun Watson.
Or
And
Amari Cooper, yeah.
and the fact that they brought this guy in, gave him a fully guaranteed fucking contract after all the shit that he's been going through. I think that brings expectations here, but I feel like the scheme upside is maybe like down here at an 8 where the expectations are going to be at a 10. But do you think Stefanski's going to shift the shit out of this offense? Because there is a bunch of change in the weaponry as well as far as pass catchers. How do you think it shakes out?
Yeah, like thinking about it from like the running back standpoint. So the offensive identity that is so run heavy in Cleveland, like maybe they let Deshaun Watson throw it a lot. Maybe Deshaun Watson does have a 20% share of the team's carries. Both of those scenarios are possible. I think the latter is probable. Both would affect the volume for the running backs. But the threat Deshaun Watson poses could help them sustain the wild efficiency we've seen. Like the Browns averaged a league high 5.1 yards per carry last year. They also scored 20 rushing touchdowns as a team. And I think Nick Chubb is talented enough to put up historic efficiency, to be honest. I know we're talking more about the dynamic additions in the passing game here in Cleveland, but, you know, in case anybody is afraid to draft Nick Chubb, don't be. Like,
No.
Nick Chubb has averaged over 5 yards per carry on 100-plus attempts in each of his first 4 seasons. That is an NFL record. I know there's risk that he and Kareem Hunt could split touches, with Hunt getting more of the pass-catching work, which is limited in this offense. Like, the running back market share is low in Cleveland. But Nick Chubb is just so dynamic, so efficient, and so locked into volume because of the scheme, and that scheme isn't going to change. And he just won't have 300 carries, and he won't catch 50 balls either. But I think Nick Chubb is a borderline outlier. Like last year, he was the running back 13, and he had the fewest targets of any of the top 13 running backs. Damian Harris, Derrick Henry, and Nick Chubb were actually the only running backs with 20 catches or less to finish top 24 in PPR leagues at the running back position last year. So he's an outlier, and he'll continue to be. Deshaun Watson I wanted to talk about because he is an outlier at the quarterback position. There's no doubt about it. He's just one of the most unique talents we've ever seen. He led the league in passing in 2020, and we know how dangerous he is with his legs. He's averaged at least 240 passing yards in all 4 seasons in the league per game, 25-plus yards rushing per game in every season. He averages almost 2 touchdown passes per game in his career, and he scores a rushing touchdown about every 3rd game on average. So that is elite fantasy stuff. And those are numbers that are entirely indicative of how special he is as a talent, how attractive his skill set is for fantasy. And I just think he has the traits that we covet, the attributes that allow for those special 400-point fantasy seasons. And a league-winning quarterback, as we talk about a lot, has become more and more a part of the recipe in terms of winning a fantasy league, no matter the format. So all emotion aside, I think the run-heavy scheme doesn't concern me that much, and I'm all about it. I think Deshaun Watson shoots right back into that top 5 conversation, the elite fantasy quarterback combo. You know what I mean? And I think we'll have to take him pretty high in fantasy drafts too. I only have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Kyler Murray ranked ahead of him right now.
Yeah, just pulling up my rankings here just to have a little peek at where he is. I would put Justin Herbert ahead of him as well. Do you have him at 6, did you say, or 5?
I think 5.
So I got Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar at 3, Justin Herbert, Kyler,
And you have
and
Lamar
then
I bet.
Watson. Yeah, Lamar. I love Lamar this year. But yeah, Deshaun Watson's going to be fantastic in that offense. And I like what you said, like that team can pound the rock and still be super efficient with lower passing volume. And I think like there's room for that passing volume to still come up a little bit. They're not going to come up into like top 10 numbers, but they can come out of bottom 10 numbers and still be uber efficient in the run game and in the passing game. Amari Cooper is obviously a beneficiary of this, coming in there thinking he had Baker Mayfield, and now he has Deshaun Watson. We talked Amari Cooper on the wide receiver episode, so I don't think we'll spend too much time on him, Ty, but just I'll wrap it with a little bit of I got him as my wide receiver 18 in my best ball ranks right now. And I think he could get that 24+% target share. Jarvis has had that the last 3 seasons, 27% in 2019. So I think that could be en route for Amari Cooper. We got to keep an eye on if they add more. Like, the thing that worries me for him is that now that they have Deshaun Watson, they're going to want to like put their little super team together, you know what I mean, and add that other big piece to him. Those big pieces are kind of falling off the map with Brandon Cooks just re-signing with the Houston Texans today, actually. But I'm interested to see what they do to maybe add another weapon as a pass catcher alongside the re-signing of my boy David Njoku.
Which I love David Njoku. You talked about him on the tight end episode as well. And just really quick, I think I mentioned this on the wide receiver episode, but the boomer bust nature of Amari Cooper is what always worries me. There's nothing that I dislike about Amari other than the fact that he is just so boomer bust. Like last year, over 40% of his fantasy points came in just 3 games. The year before, over 30% of his fantasy points came in just 3 games. In 2019, 40% of his fantasy points in PPR came in just 3 games. In 2018, Amari scored 53% of his fantasy points in just 3 games. So I could keep going, but I'm sure folks get the picture. He'll come with a few huge spiked weeks, winning you your week, but he can also kill you, and has in a lot of weeks. And, the point is that can be very frustrating when you're paying wide receiver 2 prices for him.
Yeah, big time. So I mentioned them potentially bringing in another wide receiver. Before we move off the Browns, does this make you interested in DPJ or Anthony Schwartz, Donovan Peoples-Jones or Anthony Schwartz at all?
I mean, in best ball settings, yes. Outside of that, no.
I've dabbled in a little late round DPJ. I think he showed a lot last year, showed that he could be like a decent second wide receiver alongside more of an alpha. I don't think you want DPJ as the kind of tops on your depth chart for Cleveland, but I don't mind him as that kind of later dart throw, especially in those best ball leagues. And Anthony Schwartz has that big play upside that fits really, really nicely with Deshaun Watson. So late round best ball darts, and of the 2 for 2022, if in my redraft leagues, I would go DPJ.
And I think like maybe the number 1 wide receiver, even ahead of Amari Cooper, will be the tight end position with Harrison Bryant and David Njoku. I think David Njoku is probably the second biggest threat in the passing game as we stand right now.
Yeah, they've had very fat tight end market share. The tight end market share in the red zone has been really good. From that episode, I think it was 2 seasons ago, their tight ends soaked up 46% of the team's targets inside the 20s, and that's big touchdown upside, especially for the Njoker.
And, Amari Cooper's never really excelled in that category either, right? Going back to, the Michael Crabtree days. And
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, Crabtree. Loved Crabtree. Okay, Ty.
My name.
Yeah. He's a sorry receiver. Yeah. Okay, last guy we're going to kind of really dive into, and then we got a couple of footnotes here. Ty, Russell Wilson, that was the biggest news, and so we kind of saved the best for quote-unquote last. Comes to Denver, brings with him Super Bowl aspirations. I didn't necessarily, maybe a little bit, but I didn't move the needle too much for him for fantasy purposes. Maybe a little bit of a bump up, but I think he kind of hits, for me in those quarterback ranks, he hits that point where I can't get him any higher above those younger guys, like the guys we were just rattling off. But I think things look bright for him in Denver with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, another late round dart throw for me in best balls that I am diving in on. The Ham Digler, Albert O with Noah Fant going back to Seattle. So whole new set of weapons for him, and I think they're great. But who do you think is the biggest beneficiary of the Russell Wilson trade to Denver as John Elway takes another fucking kick at the quarterback can?
Well, I love that you asked me this question because it was the one name you didn't mention, and that's Javonte Williams. I think he is the biggest winner of all, and the value of all those guys that you just mentioned soared with this move, right? Javonte Williams, I think, just keeps winning all offseason. Melvin Gordon is gone, and as big of a booner as I am.
Hey, careful, I'm wearing sweatpants right now.
Javonte does have bell cow upside, though, I think. So, we check the volume box right there. Now inject the upside of elite quarterback play, a possible top 10 offense that he's playing in, and Javonte Williams now has double-digit touchdown upside easily, and his uncanny ability to make fools miss. He led the NFL in broken tackles per touch last season as a rookie, plus the efficiency we've seen from running backs behind Russ Wilson throughout his career. I just think the ceiling is huge for Javonte. I think he's a top 10 pick in fantasy drafts for 2022. Cortland
Yep.
Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, I think, are huge winners too. Of course, like I'll probably have Jeudy as a mid wide receiver 2, Cortland Sutton more of a back end wide receiver 2. That's just the two almost present like a similar dynamic, in my opinion, to Lockett and DK in Seattle.
I think the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would instantly say that's lazy, but I think when you dive into it, it's not really. Like, I think Lockett, sorry to kind of take over there, but I think Lockett might just be like a speedier version of what Jeudy does. You know what I mean? And they can build that rapport that Russell Wilson is going to try and build with his wide receivers. I think Cortland Sutton, like you said, does a lot of the DK stuff, maybe not as much separation downfield, but I think Cortland Sutton is in for a big year. But don't let me kind of take it over there, Ty. What do you think about the Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton gap?
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of looking at my ranks here, and like Jerry Jeudy, I have ranked pretty high, and like around guys like Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin.
That's pretty fat.
Yeah, like I'm pretty bullish on Jerry Jeudy. Especially, with what we saw, the connection that he had with Tyler Lockett in Seattle. I have Cortland Sutton like a few down there and, more closer to like a Mike Williams tier and, guys like that. I actually kind of wanted to go the other way though. Like this definitely really hurts DK and Lockett. Like
let's
badly.
talk about
The
it.
booms for DK are all of a sudden going to come with a lot of busts, I think. The chemistry Russ and Lockett share just can't be understated. And Russ has been, plain and simple, just one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the history of the NFL when it comes to throwing touchdowns. And that's because of how efficient he is throwing deep and throwing into the opponent's end zone. So for DK and Lockett, there's really no avenue the Seahawks could go from here to provide those two with good quarterback play for 2022. Right now, it's looking like Drew Lock. Maybe Baker goes there. I think his personality would be a fun fit in that city.
Malik Willis with the 9th overall pick.
But yeah, none of that's going to help the pass catchers that much. So getting back to the Broncos though, like the only thing that I think gives us pause for thought is how many weapons exist in this passing game. The answer in best ball is just to accumulate a lot of shares of everybody, I think, and at cost, knowing most people will play multiple leagues as well. That's probably the answer overall, is to just accumulate a lot of shares of these guys. But I think we should mine some of the value, not just Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Like the idea of Tim Patrick and his skill set down the field in the end zone, it just aligns perfectly with what Russ does best. And KJ Hamler will be a threat to score from anywhere, anytime he's healthy and on the field. And those guys will be cheap. They're also, an injury away from having massive upside from week to week.
That's a good point.
And the other guy, Trav, is A-OK. And maybe
he's feeling that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I have A-OK as the tight end who rounds out my top 12 right now. And his spiked week potential, I think, is off the charts. The fact that the Broncos were willing to trade Noah Fant was pretty shocking to me in the deal that sent Russ to the Broncos. I think the organization let us know how high their hopes are for Alberto. And this podcast has just been a huge fan of his going back to the draft process. There's no question there. Plus, Russ loves himself some tight ends, especially in the red zone. I also realized I didn't really touch on Russell Wilson himself. For him personally, I think Russ is getting a lot. He's not really getting better protection. He's not getting any younger, but everything else he's ever longed for, he's getting with this change of scenery. Like off the top, Russ will be on a team who will show him the love. They will tailor their offense to his skill set. Imagine that, as opposed to, him playing off of a run heavy scheme or coming second to Pete Carroll's antiquated offensive ID fucking-ology. The weapons are the best he's ever had, and this is just the best skill group that around him in Denver here, I think. Also, he's getting an immediate upgrade on defense, and we remember what Russ can do, alongside an upper echelon defense. And of course, the volume should be the biggest difference. I mean, I think I tweeted it out again this year, but I like the whole most consecutive seasons under 575 pass attempts since 2010. The Seahawks have been under 575 pass attempts in all 12 seasons. It's just insane. And, the Seahawks were one of the least voluminous passing games in 2021 again, and they didn't even come close to snapping that streak. I think they had under 500 pass attempts last year, the second fewest in the league. Their new OC came in and actually slowed that offense way down. The Seahawks were the slowest offense in all of football, and it wasn't even close. It was an extremely slow offense, but to shine the light on Russ and his efficiency, Seattle still ranked 11th in air yards. So even though I don't think the Broncos are going to be like a fast-paced offense, I don't think they'll be a very pass-heavy group either, to be honest. But it will be refreshing compared to what Russ has been subjected to in Seattle. And even though he's no spring chicken anymore, I think Russ, he's just an elite quarterback who had a down season in 2021. That's how I think of him. And he feels like the person who has been in like a toxic relationship for so long. He's just finally free of it.
He is,
and,
the monkey.
And we'll get to see his potential. And maybe Chef Boy Russ and his awesome arm get unleashed. You know what I mean? And at the very least, it should be harnessed by the Broncos coaching staff more than we saw in Seattle. So he's a top 10 quarterback safely for me in fantasy in 2022. And just a reminder that Russ has done things like post historically great touchdown rates. He holds or is pushing NFL records that involve stuff like touchdown rates or, the most seasons to start a career with 16 points per game in fantasy, stuff like that. So, we mentioned like the Josh Allens, Mahomes, Herbert, Kyler, Deshaun, who was the other guy?
Lamar.
And after that, that's where Russell Wilson starts getting in the conversation for me. I think Dak Prescott, maybe Joe Burrow, and Tom Brady belong in that discussion as well. But yeah, I think Russell Wilson's right there.
Yeah, I think I might have him a tier below you. I have him as my quarterback 11 right now, but I think he definitely has the upside to finish in that top 6. I think my worry is that they're not done at the running back position. I think Melvin Gordon sitting out there on the scrap heap could be enticing for them to kind of bring back in and really go for that run in the event that they don't want to put that much of a load on Javonte Williams in his second season. But
or Russell Wilson for them. That's always been the argument, I would imagine.
Who doesn't run himself anymore, so he can't provide that as much for them as he could have maybe a decade ago in Seattle. And so that's my only little bit of a concern. But if they don't add a wide receiver, then wheels the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like it's that close to that for me. Or so if they don't add a running back. But yeah, I think everything you said was solid. I might not like Tim Patrick as much. I think Tim Patrick might fall off. Like I don't think we're gonna see a funnel. But I think Russell Wilson's never really operated in an offense where he's had 6 viable offensive pieces like that. He has 4 receivers, a dynamite tight end, and a dynamite running back. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see him having that many weapons and how spread out it is. I do wonder if it does start to condense a little bit to those 2 main guys. And then that's why I like KJ Hamler, is because I think like if that third guy is going to emerge into viability, we're going to be wanting Tim Patrick to catch an injury, where KJ Hamler is going to be that guy who just takes the top off and gets that shot, and one play is going to make him, a guy who you were lucky you threw a dart at putting in your flex spot. You know what I mean? And so, I think there's prices that are varied there. Like I think there is a pretty solid truther crew for Tim Patrick, where with the Russell Wilson signing,
the best fantasy receiver in that offense.
Yeah, he has been good, but I don't know, man. I don't know if that's going to last.
What he does best is contest catches down the field, and he's been the touchdown scorer in that offense in the past game in recent seasons. So I just think the skill set aligns so well. And the point is that Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, you ain't getting no discounts on those guys.
Fair.
And, you will get that with KJ Hamler, with Cortland,
with Timmy.
Patrick,
yeah, an interesting one to see unfold. Regardless, it's going to be exciting. That entire AFC West is looking good. Devontae Adams came in for the Raiders, and then obviously Justin Herbert and the Chargers are loaded, as well as the Chiefs. I mean, they brought in MVS, right? So,
so from the best offense or the best division in football to the worst, I think.
Yeah, let's go to the NFC least real quick. Give me some thoughts on Carson Wentz going to the Commanders, which is something that we're going to have to get used to saying, the Commanders. Yeah. Terry McLaurin, what do you think about him? Is this like a lateral move for him, or is this maybe a step up with Carson Wentz maybe showing us some of his previous deep ball prowess? Maybe. What do you think about him coming in? What do you think about a little bit of Diami peppered in at the back end too?
I don't think much of it. But,
damn it! I was just kind of putting that bait out, and you didn't bite. You didn't bite.
At the moment, I think we could see Washington be a lot more run heavy than people are anticipating, with J.D. McKissick coming back. Maybe we'll touch on the running backs during that episode with J.D. McKissick coming back.
Let's do it.
And I honestly don't have much to say about Carson Wentz. I think he's like my quarterback 21 in best ball ranks currently. But for the entire offense, this is a pretty sizable upgrade over Taylor Heineke.
I agree.
Especially in terms of like passing volume possibly, and even the type of volume when you consider how putrid. Like I like Taylor Heineke from a fantasy standpoint or whatever. He is what he is, and it impressed me, I guess, from where he was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But when you consider like the deep passing upside and stuff like that, I think Terry McLaurin. He's caught passes from guys like Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, Heineke, not to mention some other journeymen who've had cups of coffee as the quarterback for Washington. So this is good for Terry McLaurin, and he seems like a steal right now at ADP. He'll be one of my favorite targets if he stays in like the 4th round of fantasy drafts, I think, because
I agree.
He is set to see some superb volume, and now his deep ball receiving upside is increased, and we haven't really seen that in his career, in my opinion, giving him the ability to kind of make your fantasy week on one play all of a sudden, because I think he has that talent. And Wentz probably allows us to attach a bit more touchdown upside to Terry McLaurin versus what we've thought in the past. And Washington was one of the run heaviest teams in the red zone last year as well. I want to point that out. And they only got to their opponent's red zone 3 times per game on average last year. So very low red zone trips. And they were very run heavy in their opponent's red zone. So I just think Terry McLaurin has a lot of upside. I think I might even take him ahead of someone like DK Metcalf all of a sudden, with all the comings and goings.
I like that.
Quarterback carousel. But in a tier kind of with like Elijah Moore, I think Amari Cooper's in that conversation, DJ Moore, maybe Jerry Jeudy as well. So I am pretty high on.
I might be higher than you. I have him as my wide receiver 18 in the like Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, DJ Moore range.
Yeah, I have him ahead of Mike Evans as well.
I have him just behind Mike Evans.
And I probably do have to move him a little bit up. But Jalen Waddle's not a bad, especially with Tyreek Hill coming in. Like I actually might move Jalen just a tad down and move him a tad up. T. Higgins, somebody I have ahead of him. Debo still a little bit ahead of him.
Same. No, I like it. We're in pretty good lockstep there. And I think, like you said, like Taylor Heineke was awesome himself as a fantasy fill-in late in the season, but he doesn't do anything for the passing weapons because if he sees danger, he's going to tuck it and run and likely put himself in dangerous situations because that guy goes hard, man. He's a fun quarterback to watch, but not if you're a Terry McLaurin stan.
Traffic. Like every time he throws the ball down, it's just like literally gut.
Yeah, it is too. You're just scared.
I don't even like Wentz.
Yeah, you're just scared. And yeah, like Carson Wentz, I think he can provide a little bit of that. And we've seen him throw the ball deep. Whether good or bad, he'll put it up. And I think Terry is probably the most talented wide receiver that Carson Wentz has ever played with, now that I think about it. Because the Eagles have always had dumpy wideout rooms. And then he had Michael Pittman, but I put Terry McLaurin above that. So let's see how she goes. Logan Thomas, Carson Wentz always likes to have his tight end safety blanket that he can snuggle up to when he wants to have a little cry. And I think Logan Thomas can be that as well. I like De'Ami Brown for like what we're saying about Terry McLaurin and the deep passing. De'Ami Brown in the ilk of like a KJ Hamler, you know what I mean? Like that guy who you're like, fuck it, here we go. Let's throw him in the flex for that opportunity for a 20 berg. And then he puts it up on 2 big deep shots, right? So I like De'Ami as a late round best ball flyer, but maybe I'm just still hanging on to that hope.
The rebound on defense, like can they have this bounce back season on defense in Washington? I think will go a long way to the run pass ratio, how competitive that team is, blah, blah, blah. So I think that'll play a significant role into how much volume is available for somebody not named Terry McLaurin in the passing game.
Yeah, good point.
Thomas, and Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick. Like I think the running back market share will be pretty predominant in Washington as well. But I think the big message I would like to get across is that we will see Terry McLaurin's versatility that I think he really does possess put on display, because we know what he can do after the catch. We know he can basically do it all. And I think we'll finally see some deep passing upside that we've just not been able to harness or capture from him.
Giddy up, my man. So just before we ride out here, Ty, I do want to say thanks to our friends at Trophy Smack. They're doing big things over there on the content side. They got a lot of people coming on to kind of write and produce content for them. And then, of course, they've got their incredible products, all the trophies that are coming out, the belts. I'll get it back into our setup soon. I'll get the belt back showing off. But go check out our friends at Trophy Smack if you want to level up your league, because there's nothing like walking into a live draft with a big, heavy belt on your shoulder. Heavy is the head that wears the crown of league champion. Ty. And you can do that with Trophy Smack, or you can shit on your buddy who lost as well with a shit talking trophy. They got all sorts of stuff. You can customize your own logos and stuff like that, custom plaques. So it's tons of fun. TNFF's the promo code, and you get a free championship ring with the purchase of a trophy or a belt. So design your trophy or your belt for your league, and you'll get a free championship ring, and you can gloat about that as well. So thanks to them for that. But yeah, Ty, any final thoughts? One thing I did want to throw out there is that the draft is upcoming, and there's going to be some more quarterback movement. We've got I think a questionable quarterback class coming, and we haven't dove too far into the rookies, but I think it's a questionable class that's going to maybe get overdrafted. I'm seeing a lot of people who are saying we could see 4 in the first round, and I think that would be absolutely buck wild. But teams that are most likely to draft quarterbacks: Panthers, Falcons, Lions. We talked about the Commanders, the Seahawks as well. We talked about them. The Steelers could be in on the quarterback market as well. So I think we're going to see a lot more movement. We're going to have a lot more to break down on the True North Fantasy Pod. And of course, we appreciate everyone watching. But any final quarterback thoughts on those guys and those teams?
No, I think you hit that perfectly. I just wanted to throw the Steelers out there. I think they are definitely in the quarterback market as well, the quarterback and wide receiver market. So yeah, I think we hit a lot of these quarterbacks, and we'll continue to follow that because everything trickles down from the quarterback position. It's arguably the most important component to every offense is what your quarterback can do, and yeah, everything trickles down from what they can do.
Yep, absolutely. I love how you said that, because trickle down, fun fact, a killer song by the Tragically Hip. So if you're out there and you haven't heard it, Trickle Down by the Hip will get you grooving a little bit. That's all I got, Ty. I think that was a fun little episode to wrap up the quarterbacks, because we've never seen movement at the quarterback position. I find when we design quarterback episodes, it usually feels maybe a little bit lackluster, but this one was beefy with the storylines to talk about. So thanks to all our sponsors: Trophy Smack, Underdog, Fantasy Points, and Monkey Knife Fight. Go check out Viridian Global. The football collective is doing work, and thanks to the team at Viridian, you can find all of our gear there. And then TrueNorthFFB.com and True North FFB on the socials. Go check us out. Like I said at the top of the show, we like to engage. We want to chat. Go comment on our stuff. If you see us posting some stuff, feel free to chat about it with us. Please comment on the YouTube. Please leave a like. Please make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button so you get those little ding, 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 ding whenever we do a show or drop something. You can check it out there. We're trying to post some more clips of the shows for those digestible kind of short forms. So please keep on the lookout and subscribe to the channel for that. But until next time, Ty, we're gonna be talking running backs next, and we are flying through this off season. So for Tyrell McLaughlin, I am Travis Seal. Peace.